the Japanese driving habit that decides how long your engine really lasts. On January 9th, 2025, two trucks sat in my bay at the same time, and they told me everything you need to know about why some engines die at 140,000 miles and others cross 300,000 like it is nothing. Same model, same year. Within a few thousand miles of each other on the odometer. One owner babied his truck, garage kept, premium fuel, oil changed early every single time. The other guy admitted he barely thought about his at all. And yet, when I pulled the valve covers, the careful owner's engine was caked in varnish, and the casual guy's looked almost new inside. Today, I am revealing the one driving habit that explains that gap. A habit almost nobody outside Japan is ever taught, that costs nothing, takes no tools, and quietly decides whether your engine lasts a decade or 3. Because the difference between those two trucks had nothing to do with oil brand, fuel grade, or how often the careful owner opened his wallet. It came down to the first 4 minutes of every drive. I have been turning wrenches for over 2 decades, and for most of that time, I believed what everyone believes, that engines wear out from miles. You drive enough of them, the metal gives up, the parts let go, and one day, it is done. That is the story we all tell. It is also mostly wrong. Engines do not usually die from the miles you put on them. They die from the way those miles are started. And the people who understand this best are not in Detroit or Germany. They are driving taxis in Tokyo with 400,000 kilometers on the clock and an idle so smooth you would swear the engine was new. Here is the uncomfortable truth most drivers never hear. The single most destructive thing you do to your engine is not redlining it on the highway. It is not towing. It is not even skipping an oil change here and there. It is demanding power from a cold engine in the first few minutes before the oil is actually warm. And almost everyone does it every single day without the slightest idea they are doing damage. To understand why, you have to understand what's actually happening inside your engine the moment you turn the key on a cold morning. When an engine sits overnight, it cools to the temperature of the air around it. The oil, which is the only thing standing between metal and metal, gets thick and sluggish. It drains down off the top of the engine and pools in the pan. So at startup, for those first critical seconds, parts of your engine are running with almost no oil film at all while the pump fights to push cold, syrupy oil through passages thinner than a coffee stirrer. This is why technicians have said for decades that the majority of engine wear happens at startup. It's not a myth. Cold oil doesn't flow, additives in the oil haven't activated yet, and the metal is touching metal in ways it never does when warm. But here's the part that almost nobody understands, and it's the part that separates a mechanic from a part swapper. The engine being cold isn't just about the oil, it's about the metal itself changing shape. Your pistons, your bores, your bearings. They are all engineered to fit perfectly at operating temperature. When the engine is cold, those clearances are wrong. The pistons are slightly too small for their bores. The tolerances haven't closed up yet. The whole engine is running loose, sloppy, and unprotected, waiting to expand into the precise machine it was designed to be. And it only becomes that machine once it's hot. Now here's the trap that catches nearly everyone, including a lot of so-called careful owners. They look at the temperature gauge on the dash, see it climb to normal, and assume the engine is warm. It isn't. That gauge reads coolant temperature, not oil temperature. And coolant warms up far faster than oil does. Your dashboard can be sitting pretty in the middle, telling you everything is fine, while the oil, the stuff that actually protects the metal, is still cold and thick and 10 minutes away from being ready. The gauge isn't lying exactly. It's just answering a different question than the one you're asking. And that gap between what the gauge says and what the oil is actually doing is where engines quietly destroy themselves. So now think about what most people do. They start the car. Maybe they let it idle for 30 seconds, maybe not. Then they pull out and immediately get on the throttle, merging onto a fast road, climbing a hill, flooring it to beat a light. The coolant gauge hasn't moved. The oil is barely above freezing. The clearances are all wrong. And in that exact moment, they're demanding maximum load from an engine that is at its most vulnerable. Do that twice a day for 10 years and you've cold-hammered your engine roughly 7,000 times. That's where the varnish comes from. That's where the wear comes from. That's why my careful owner's engine looked tired. He warmed it up wrong, then drove it hard the second the needle moved. This is where the Japanese habit comes in, and it's so simple, it almost sounds like nothing. The discipline isn't about warming the car up longer, it's the opposite of what most Westerners assume. The habit is this: start the engine, give it just enough time for oil pressure to come up, 10 to 30 seconds, no more, and then drive away gently. No hard throttle, no high RPM, no heavy load. You keep it calm and light until the engine is genuinely warm, not when the gauge says so, but for a few minutes past that. You treat the first stretch of every drive as a no-stress zone, every single time, without exception. And here's the part that surprises people. Driving gently doesn't just protect the engine, it warms it up faster than idling does. The EPA found that a car reaches operating temperature roughly twice as fast when driven gently, compared to sitting and idling. When you idle, only the engine block slowly heats, while the oil barely circulates. When you drive under light load, everything warms together and evenly. The oil, the transmission fluid, the catalytic converter, even the wheel bearings. So the old habit of sitting in the driveway for 10 minutes letting it idle isn't just wasting fuel. It's actually keeping your engine in the cold, vulnerable danger zone longer than necessary while you wait. The Japanese fleet approach gets it exactly right by accident of discipline. Brief pause for oil pressure, then gentle motion, and only then normal driving. Think of it like a sprinter. You would never tell a world-class runner to walk out of the locker room cold and immediately run 100 meters at full speed. They'd tear something. So they warm up with light movement that gradually raises the heart rate and gets blood into the muscles, and then they perform. Your engine is no different. The gentle drive is the warm-up jog. The hard acceleration is the sprint. And the entire question of whether your engine lasts comes down to whether you let it jog before you make it sprint. Most drivers skip straight to the sprint every cold morning, and then wonder why their engine feels tired at 150,000 miles. Now, here's the second half of this habit, and it's the one that destroys more engines than hard acceleration ever could, because it's invisible. It's the short trip. When you start a cold engine and only drive it a few minutes, then shut it off, the engine never reaches full operating temperature at all. And an engine that never gets hot has a hidden problem most owners never hear about. During cold running, a small amount of fuel washes past the rings and into the oil. At the same time, condensation, actual water vapor from combustion, and from the damp air the engine breathes, collects inside the engine and contaminates the oil. When the engine gets fully hot, That fuel and that moisture boil off and leave through the system the way they are supposed to. But on a short trip, the engine never gets hot enough to burn them off. So they stay. They build up. The oil slowly turns from a clean lubricant into a diluted, watery, acidic soup that protects nothing. This is why a car driven on nothing but short, cold trips, the classic 5-minute commute, the quick run to the store and back, can be in far worse shape than a car with double the mileage that gets driven long and hot regularly. The short trip car looks easy on paper, low miles, gentle life. But internally, it has been marinating in contaminated oil its whole life, because it never once got hot enough to clean itself out. The Japanese fleet drivers, the taxis and delivery vans that run all day, almost never have this problem. Their engines reach full temperature and stay there for hours. The contamination boils off continuously. That's a huge part of why those high-mileage vehicles stay so healthy, not despite the miles, but because of how those miles are run. Here's where the industry side of this gets uncomfortable. None of this gets taught, and there's a reason. There is no money in it. A shop can't sell you a warm-up habit. There's no part to install, no service to bill, no premium product to upsell. A mechanic who tells you, just drive gently for the first few minutes and take longer trips when you can, has just given away the single most valuable piece of engine longevity advice that exists, for free, and made $0 doing it, so it doesn't get said. Instead, when your short trip, cold-hammered engine finally starts burning oil or building sludge at 130,000 miles, that's when the register rings. Now there's a problem to diagnose, parts to replace, labor to bill. The incentives don't reward prevention. They reward the failure that prevention would have stopped. That's not a conspiracy. It's just how the business is built. But it means the responsibility falls on you, because nobody in that chain profits from telling you the truth early. Let me be honest about the limits here, because I'm not going to sell you magic. This habit will not save an engine that's already neglected. If you've got a worn timing chain, a real oil leak, or damage that's already done, driving gently from now on won't undo it. And this isn't an excuse to skip oil changes, the warm-up discipline and clean oil work together, not as substitutes. What this habit does is prevent the slow, invisible damage before it ever starts. It's not a repair, it's the reason you never need the repair. So here's exactly what to do, starting with your very next drive. Start the engine and give it 10 to 30 seconds, just long enough for oil pressure to stabilize and the oil to start moving. You don't need to sit there for 5 minutes, that does more harm than good. Then drive away gently. Light throttle, low RPM, no hard merges or hill climbs if you can help it, until the engine has been running and moving for a few minutes past the point where the gauge reads normal. Remember, the gauge is showing you coolant, and the oil is always a few minutes behind it, so give it that margin. And whenever you can, choose the longer drive over the short hop. Let the engine get fully hot and stay hot. Combine your short errands into one longer trip so the engine isn't constantly cold cycling. That's the whole habit. No tools, no cost, no downtime. Just discipline applied to the first 4 minutes. Engines don't die suddenly. They drift, cold start by cold start, short trip by short trip, until one day they feel tired and you blame the mileage. But it was never really the mileage. It was the thousands of cold, unprotected, hard-driven first minutes that nobody ever told you mattered. The Japanese habit exists to stop that drift before you can feel it, and now you know exactly how to do it. If this changed the way you think about those first few minutes of every drive, hit like, so more drivers see it before they cold hammer their engines into an early grave. Subscribe if you want weekly breakdowns that give you control over your own car instead of leaving it to a shop. And drop a comment telling me, be honest, how many seconds you usually wait before you put your foot down on a cold morning. Because the most expensive engine damage isn't the kind you hear happen. It's the kind that happens silently, every single day, in the 4 minutes you never knew were costing you anything.